Hey everyone, I'm Travis Spivey, joined with my son,
Jordan Spivey, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so don't miss out on any of our awesome science videos.
In today's video, we will discuss how to set up and balance chemical equations. So let's do this.
Our learning targets for today are: number 1, I can determine if a chemical equation is balanced by counting the number of atoms there are in the reactants and the products of the equation. Number 2, I can add coefficients to balance out chemical equations. Let's first start off with the law of conservation of matter, which states that atoms are neither created nor destroyed in a chemical reaction. This means that in a chemical reaction, you must have the same number of atoms in the reactants and the products. Let's take a look at the following illustration of this law. If you've noticed, there are 4 hydrogen and 2 oxygen atoms on the left-hand side. These atoms are our reactants. It is important to know that reactants are always on the left and products are always on the right side of a chemical reaction. The atom pointed to the right is our yield sign, which shows that a chemical reaction is taking place. Now let's look on the right at our product side. Notice that in the products, there are 4 hydrogen atoms and there are 2 oxygen atoms. This is a perfect example that atoms are not created or destroyed in this chemical reaction, but changed or transformed from one form to another. How do we know this? It's simple. The same number of hydrogen is on both sides, and the same number of oxygen is on both sides. Basically, there are exactly the same number of atoms on the reactants and product side of the chemical equation.
Now let's go over the symbols used in balancing chemical equations. The first thing we want to look at is these numbers at the bottom. Notice they're below the element symbol. Since these numbers are below, we call them subscripts, like a submarine is under the water. You get it? Never mind. Subscripts tell how many atoms of an element are in a chemical equation. Very important. You cannot change the subscript number to balance chemical equations. It will always remain the same. The larger numbers in front of the elements are called coefficients. You can change the number for coefficients to balance chemical equations. Once again, you cannot change your subscripts to balance chemical equations, but you can change your coefficients to balance chemical equations. I hope you remember it. You got it. Let's keep moving. The arrow pointing to the right in the middle of the chemical equation is a yield sign. This symbol symbolizes that a chemical reaction is taking place. So remember, our reactants are on the left side and our products are on the right side. If you notice, our number of reactants are listed below the reactants, and the same thing for our number of products. Notice that they are the same elements on each side for the number of atoms, because once again, matter cannot be created or destroyed, so what goes in must come out. Quick check for understanding. List the number of reactants and product atoms for the following chemical equations. Pause the video and take 2 minutes to complete. You got this.
Let's walk through balancing a chemical equation. Take a look at the following equation. Remember, you must have the same number of atoms on both sides for the equation to be balanced. Take a second and see if the equation is balanced. If you said it's balanced, then you were absolutely incorrect. The equation is not balanced. Let's see why. There is the same number of mercury on each side with 1 per side, but look at the oxygen. There is 1 oxygen on the left and 2 oxygen on the right. This equation is not balanced. Now how do we balance it? Let's use this balancing chemical equations checklist to set up and balance equations. First, write the chemical equation for the reaction. Second, list the atoms and the reactants which are on the left side. Third, list the atoms and the product which are on the right side. Fourth, add coefficients to balance the equation. Remember, always start off with the number 2 as a coefficient and work your way up. It is also important to note that when you add coefficients in front of a chemical equation, they multiply by the subscript. For example, if we put 5 in front of O2, the coefficient of 5 will multiply by the subscript of 2, which will give us 10 oxygen in all. And fifth, check to make sure the equation is balanced. Quick check for understanding. How many atoms will we have of the following element that contain a coefficient and subscript? Pause the video. Take a minute to find the correct number of atoms for each of the following elements.
Let's use this checklist to balance the following chemical equation. Remember, we cannot change the subscript, but we can add coefficients to balance the equation. First, we have already written the equation, so second, we will list our number of reactants on the left, which is 1 mercury and 1 oxygen. Third, we will list our number of products on the right with 1 mercury and 2 oxygen. Notice the oxygens are not balanced, so we will attack the oxygens first. If we have 2 oxygens on the right, we want to have 2 oxygens on the left. So let's put this 2 in front of the mercury oxide on the reactant side. This part is important because when we put this 2 in front, it gets distributed to mercury and oxygen. So now we cross out our old number of atoms and put our new number of atoms on the reactant side. There are now 2 mercury and 2 oxygen on the reactant side. So now we have the same number of oxygen on each side, but how do we balance out the mercury? It's simple. We just add a 2 in front of the mercury on the product side. Now let's look. We have 2 mercury on each side and 2 oxygen on each side. We can put a 1 in front of O2 because it's just like saying 1 times 2, which will still give us 2 oxygen. So nothing changes with the number of oxygen for that side. Congrats! We now have a fully balanced chemical equation. Now let's practice. Look at the following chemical equation and answer the following questions. Number 1, is the chemical equation balanced? Why or why not? Number 2, how many nitrogen are on the reactant side? How many nitrogen are on the product side? Number 3, how many hydrogen are on the reactant side and how many hydrogen are on the product side? Number 4, I'll help you out a little. What number should you put in front of NH3 to first try to balance the chemical equation out? Let's start here first. Now, how many nitrogen do you have on the product side? How many hydrogen do you now have on the product side? And number 5, are your nitrogen balanced on each side? And what about your hydrogen? Are they balanced on each side? If you did it correctly, your nitrogen are now balanced, but your hydrogen are not. Real simple question. What number would you put in front of H2 on the reactant side to get the same number of hydrogen on each side? Remember, coefficients multiply times the subscript. If you balance your chemical equation correctly, you should have 2 nitrogen on each side and 2 hydrogen on each side. Congrats, you just balanced your chemical equation.
Now it's time to work independently or with a partner to solve the following equations. Remember to use your notes and your checklist to balance the following equations. We have all the faith in the world for you.
And that's our video for today. Now let's test your knowledge to see how proficient you are with setting up and balancing chemical equations by taking our video quiz.
Use your electronic device to scan the QR code at the top right of the screen, or you can click the link in the description box below the video to take the quiz.
Remember, 80% or higher for proficiency. Record your results on your proficiency sheet, and if you don't get it the first time, you better keep going because it's not over until you win.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also click the bell icon so you don't miss out on any of our awesome videos.
Peace and have a positive, productive day.